The following video presentation is brought to you by Bezel 333.
Hello, Bezel 333. You know, in the past I've been asked to look at Genesis chapter 6, the first couple of verses that speak of the sons of God, the daughters of men, and the Nephilim. Who and what are they? You remember that group back in I believe it was the early 90s called They Might Be Giants?
You can hurry me out by the light switch. Who watches over you? Make a little birdhouse in your soul, not to put too fine a point on it. Say I'm the only bee in your bonnet. Make a little birdhouse in your soul.
Well, we're not talking about those guys, and we're not talking about this guy. This is Fezzik from the movie The Princess Bride. Remember, he hung out with Inigo Montoya and Wesley. And I remember that line of his. I loved it when he said, "I can't help it if I'm the biggest or strongest. I don't even work out." No, the giants that we're talking about, or the Nephilim, as they're called here in Genesis chapter 6, are biblical, historical figures written by Moses. Now, our job, our task, is to find out who they are and exactly what they are. Let me read the passage very quickly. When men began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide with man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." Now, I want to present three basic interpretations that are held by people, most people, and I want to start with the most unlikely in my mind and the most likely. And I must say that the one that I'm forced to go with is the one I like the least, but it seems to make the most sense. So let's begin with the three interpretations. Now, in this first interpretation that actually is quite popular, the sons of God are the holy Sethites. The daughters of men are the daughters of the evil Canaanites, and the Nephilim are the result of this unholy union of the Canaanites and the holy Sethites. The problem here is nowhere are the Sethites ever called the sons of God. And we know that ever since the fall, we wouldn't want to say that a whole group of people descended from Seth would be holy or perfect in God's sight. The other thing is the daughters of men could hardly be restricted to one particular people group, the daughters of the Canaanites. So it's difficult to use this interpretation, even though I believe it comes from chapter 4 talking about the Canaanites, and then chapter 5 talking about the Sethites. But I think there's enough problems that it's probably not the best way to go. So let's look at the second interpretation. Now, the second interpretation would say that the sons of God are actually kings or noblemen coming from these pagan areas. Instead of having the intermarrying of the Sethites and the Canaanites, what you have is these mighty men, kings or noblemen, taking women to themselves, actually creating harems, you might say. Now, remember, Lamech had a kind of a polygamous thing going on. He had more than one wife. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that this might be the case. But no Israelite king was ever referred to as a son of God. So the whole thing of power-hungry kings trying to create dynasties by having many descendants is really something that has to be kind of imposed upon the passage. And therefore, I don't think, again, it's the best way to go. Let's look at the third interpretation, which again is the most hard for me to swallow, but fits best with what the text actually says. Now, this third interpretation, the one I now believe is the most biblical, is that the sons of God are none other than fallen angels who took on a masculine human form and had relations with both the daughters of the Canaanites and the Sethites and made a hybrid race of giants who were physically superior called the Nephilim. Now again, these Nephilim were destroyed along with sinful mankind at the flood, save 8 people, Noah and his family. The reason I say this is because the term sons of God is used elsewhere. In Job 1:6 we see it. In Job 38:7 we also see it. And that problematic passage where Jesus talks about that people in heaven neither marry nor are given in marriage but are like the angels, well, all that indicates is that angels don't marry. It doesn't mean that, that no one is going to have a sex when they get into heaven. We find this. I'm gonna try to give you an example of this. The homosexuals who found the angels who were trying to save Lot in Genesis 19, they found them very attractive, and they knew what attractive masculine people, guys, were like. So what I want to say is, as hard as this is, it's probably the best way to go. And remember, this was brought to a climax, and God dealt with this situation at the flood when all the Nephilim, as well as all sinful humankind, was destroyed, except for Noah, who found favor in the eyes of God. Now, Chuck Missler, a popular Bible teacher, and he was the former chief of the Federal Department of Guided Missiles, I believe, has a strange slant on the Nephilim, and he seems to want to connect them to the phenomenon of UFOs. Let's take a listen.
Are these people around today, in your opinion, these descendants of the Nephilim?
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Well, not necessarily as descendants directly, because I think that's been dealt with. But I think there's, okay. But at the same time, I do suspect that the UFOs are in effect a modern day echo, if you will, and that may be what Jesus was talking about when he says, "As the days of Noah were." That there's he's implying a parallelism.
Another point of view, I don't believe that Jesus is talking about the Nephilim in Matthew 24 when he's talking about his second coming. What he does say is that concerning the day and the hour no one knows, and uses the day of Noah as an example. They were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and at that time they were still unaware that the flood waters were coming, and then it swept them all away. Such will be the immediacy of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now listen to what Chuck Missler has to say about UFOs in general.
We believe they're hyperdimensional, they're demonic. They also pretend to be something they're not. That means that one of their tools is deceptions. And so that gives us a perspective of where they stand biblically. I believe that they are real today and that they are demonic in their root purpose. And so that creates a danger to anyone that isn't tutored in this area.
Now, rarely do I agree with anyone who's interviewed on Sid Roth's It's Supernatural, but Chuck Missler here has a really good point. You know, I would like to try to explain UFO activity first by natural causes, natural phenomenon, things that happen, whether it be mistaken identity, it's really a weather balloon, or an aircraft that's man-made. But if we run out of natural, there needs to be a supernatural explanation for UFOs. And I believe what Chuck says here is right, although I don't believe the Nephilim have anything to do with UFOs, this hybrid of half angelic and half human creature. But actually, all UFO activity, if it's truly supernatural, is demonic and of Satan.
When Jesus spoke to his disciples regarding his second coming, he made the intriguing statement, "As in the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be." In the days of Noah, Scripture introduces us to a hybrid called the Nephilim, the fallen ones. What were these creatures? Do they exist today? Could they be related to UFO sightings and encounters?
My answer is no. They don't exist today, and they have nothing to do with UFOs. The Nephilim were extinguished as a hyper race at the flood of Noah. But people, we're getting one day, each and every day, closer to the second coming of Jesus Christ, the end of human history. Read your scriptures. Allow Scripture to interpret Scripture, and look for Christ in all the Scriptures. Put Him first in your life.